Donald Trump and the Trump administration are on an epic losing streak when it comes to immigration and deportation and his violation of the Constitution. I'm talking about dozens of federal courts have ruled against them, and 3 times the United States Supreme Court in the last 3 weeks has ruled against Donald Trump, and not by a little, by a lot. 9-0, 6-3, and 7-2. And yet Donald Trump has not gotten the memo, but other federal judges have. And as a result, there's things that are obvious that are now precedent established by the Supreme Court. Donald Trump and his administration and everybody else must give notice and due process rights to those before they are removed and deported. If they've already been removed and deported without that, he needs to bring them back and facilitate their return. And he can't do anything unless we have this whole thing ground through the administrative process of immigration law. That's not me talking. That's the United States Supreme Court. And you know who else has gotten the message that Donald Trump is not playing well in the sandbox? Somebody crapped in somebody's cornflakes when it came to the Constitution. Other federal judges like Judge Boasberg and Judge Zinnus. Judge Boasberg is presiding over a major case about whether Donald Trump violated the Constitution and all of these Supreme Court decisions I just laid out by deporting and removing to the deep, dark recesses of a gulag in El Salvador 250 people not named Armando Abrego Garcia, and whether he has the power to bring them back for due process purposes. So he's got a hearing going on there, and he's getting fed up with the Trump administration. And also Judge Zinnus, who is the judge in Maryland who's presiding over the Abrego Garcia decision or matters, she is issued a couple of orders recently that are very, very important and you should know about. I put it all together with my podcast partner, Ben Meiselas, on Legal AF, the podcast. Take a listen. So let me turn now to Boasberg and Zinnus. Sounds like a law firm somewhere. And both these things that were going on in their courtrooms are all come out of the same place. A tremendous, epic losing streak by the Trump administration, led by Stephen Miller and Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and the rest in the area of immigration, removal, deportation. And it's just epic. There's no silver lining to it. It's just one after another, sometimes on the same day. Federal judges are ruling, almost in unison, but in separate courthouses and courtrooms and states, that Donald Trump has not provided notice and due process, has not abided by the requirements of the writ of habeas corpus, has violated his statutory duties under the Alien Enemies Act, has improperly invoked the Alien Enemies Act because there's no predatory incursion. And that's going on, as you've outlined now, in a half a dozen courts, including 3 over a 72-hour period last week in Texas, Colorado, and in New York, which is the exact thing that that's the exact path the Supreme Court set us on when Donald Trump was busy celebrating a case that he won that I'm going to talk about next in Judge Boasberg's courtroom that we call JGG. Those are initials to anonymize and protect these Venezuelans who have been deported or about to be deported to El Salvador without due process. That JGG case, the 6-3 case, that had Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and others popping champagne corks. And it was nothing. It was a Pyrrhic victory at best. It was a procedural victory about process, not about the substantive ability or the right of Trump to use the Alien Enemies Act as an emergency power to deport without due process. That's how they interpreted it, but that's not how everybody else interpreted it, including the Supreme Court and judges like Boasberg and Zinnus. So we have the spawn, the progeny coming out of the JGG case, as cited by every one of these other federal judges I just talked about. And if there was any ambiguity about where the Supreme Court stood in the JGG case, which was you got to have writs of habeas corpus, you got to have federal judges involved, you got to do it while they're in the United States, you got to give them notice, and you can challenge the Alien Enemies Act before each individual judge. That's the thing, Ben, when we talked last week about the other shocking, staggering moment, which I never thought would be topped, which was Donald Trump telling Kristen Welker, I don't know, due process, it's Do I have to give due process to everybody? Is that I have good, brilliant lawyers? Maybe do I? I don't know. Seems like a lot. Seems like that'd be too many things to do. I don't want to do that. And Kristen Welker's like, "Are you I mean, she didn't say it, but she was certainly thinking, "Are you mad?" And then Stephen Miller topped it. It was like, "How do I out crazy? I got it. We'll suspend the writ of habeas corpus." I'm like, but we can't ignore it. I mean, we can't get Trump fatigue, and we can't ignore what they're clearly saying out loud. They have a very good habit of doing exactly what they say they're going to do, the Trump administration. They're very good that way. We're going to run the playbook from Project 2025 page by page. They are doing that. Whatever they said on the campaign trail, Alien Enemies Act, we're doing it. Writ of habeas corpus, we're looking into it. America for Americans only, Stephen Miller special. Yeah, we're doing it. So you got that going on. Then you have two more. If the ambiguity was not, it was somehow lost on the Trump administration, two more Supreme Court decisions in a row should have solved that problem for them. 9-0 supporting Judge Zinnus, saying that she's doing everything right to rule that due process, this common theme today, due process is the driver. And you are protecting due process rights of Abrego Garcia and others by ordering him and ordering the Trump administration to facilitate his release from an El Salvadoran jail without due process. Keep it up. Good work. You do you. They had one little line in there about just be careful about effectuate, because maybe you get into the area of foreign affairs, and then you got the Supreme Commander problem with Article 2 in the presidency. And that's all Stephen Miller heard. Whoa, we won 9-0 when you lost 9-0. But you see Stephen Miller, even in a pitch and catch with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. Stephen, what did we do in that Supreme Court case? Literally, Stephen Miller said out loud, we won. You didn't win. And nobody thinks you won, including federal judges and the Supreme Court. So you got the 9-0, and then you got the 7-2, which popped out at 1 o'clock in the morning a month ago. When does we're talking about so many firsts. Judges speaking out of turn, speaking out of school during the term of the Supreme Court at conferences where they're obviously talking about the Trump administration. Well, Roberts, as he alluded to in his interview, issuing a statement from his perch as the head of the judiciary to the head of the executive branch, like pump the brakes on going after impeaching judges. And now you've got this other first, which is 1 a.m. We're not trying to commute a sentence, like the governor calling to stop somebody from getting the death penalty. They felt they had to get that thing out that day, 7-2, in which they said, ground the planes, stop flying planes. This is why we don't talk about flying planes to El Salvador or anywhere else right now, because of that ruling. So that is the body of work. And now the federal judges, which Boasberg and Zinnus have observed and mentioned in their courtrooms, like Hellerstein, Rodriguez, Sweeney, Trump, Biden. I mean, it's like it runs the political spectrum, have now done what the Supreme Court anticipated that they would do, declare that the use of the Alien Enemies Act was unconstitutional and illegal and statutory violation and ultra vires by Donald Trump. So he's got that all losing streak, and that all ended up in the courtroom of Judge Boasberg. Now, why are we still talking about Boasberg? Because some of you might be saying, isn't that the JGG case? You just said that he didn't have, the court said, you don't really have jurisdiction in D.C. We got to place this in individual courts wherever the prisoner is for habeas corpus. Yes, except there's that other 250 people who are Venezuelans that were sent to El Salvador who are not named Abrego Garcia. And if you take the natural good faith interpretation of all those Supreme Court cases, they're entitled to due process too. And you can't give them due process while they've already been secreted away and hidden in a prison at CCOT. And so the question for Boasberg is, should he certify that class? And does he have jurisdiction? Particularly, the issue of joint custody is driving his decision-making. Does El Salvador and the United States have joint custody over the operation of that jail? So Boasberg starts grilling this sock puppet, this pinata that the Department of Justice rolled out as their latest lawyer to argue with Judge Boasberg. They're hiding Drew Ensign because he did terribly. I don't even know where Drew Ensign is these days. But they trotted out this other person. And the judge says, who's a skilled prosecutor, he says, all right, well, I've been watching TV. I've seen statements made by President Trump in which he said he could pick up the phone and make a phone call and get him back. Is that true? Was he telling the truth? Well, that was taken out of context, and that was a political. That was really him indicating what he feels about his powers of persuasion. So the judge cut him off and said, "So that was a lie. That he doesn't have that," because he told Kristen Welker and he told Terry Moran in interviews in that terrible. Whoever let Donald Trump go out for his 100 days interviews with they should be fired for professional malpractice because he was terrible. Great for us, terrible for America. But he did say to Terry Moran said, "There's a phone on your desk. Bukele's got a phone in El Salvador. Pick up the phone. Buck stops with you." "Well, I could, Terry, but he is a terrible person and I won't do it." The judge said, "Was he lying or telling the truth?" Well, he said, "Let's talk about Kristi Noem, your Homeland Security director. She went down to CCOT and stood there. I've seen the clip," Boasberg said, and she said that by putting these Venezuelans in an El Salvadoran prison, it was a tool in the U.S.'s toolbox. Doesn't tool and toolkit or whatever it was, doesn't that imply control and custody, joint custody? Well, I'm not going to parse words. Okay, let me give word to advocates in front of a federal judge. You are there to parse words. I'm not going to, that's our political view. And, it's not as nuanced, doesn't mean legal custody. And the judge cut him off and said, "Okay, so here's what we're going to do, since I can't get a straight answer out of you. This is now losing patience 101 by Judge Boasberg. Remember, this is the same judge. And I say remember, that's just a rhetorical flourish. If you don't remember, let me tell you. This is the same judge that 3 weeks ago found probable cause that the Trump administration was in criminal contempt for their failure to return the planes or fly the planes over his order down there. Now, that got suspended for a moment, at least for now, by a court of appeal. But, you can't undo that. I mean, I can't unsee that order. And so that's the same judge. And so he said, "All right, okay, we're going to do some discovery. Okay, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I want sworn statements under oath about the relationship between the United States and El Salvador. I want to see the receipts. I want to know what the money was paid for. I want to know where it went. I want to see the contract. I want to see whatever it is that tethers the United States to that jail. And I want it by this date." And, they can say what they want about this middle of the road judge. It's very highly respected. Leftist, Marxist, whatever these ridiculous is. Same phrases they were throwing around against Pope Leo, by the way. They love the Marxist, activist, whatever phraseology. That'd be a badge of honor if they called me that, frankly. But anyway, with Boasberg, he's going to get to the bottom of this. Now, the question he's trying to figure out, not contempt this time, is whether he has jurisdiction in order to order the Trump administration to do what Zinnus ordered him to do, which is to get those 250 back. But he's trying to figure out what the strings are that the Trump administration has retained and they could pull to bring it back. Because nobody believes in our audience, you, Ben, me, that they just dump people off without getting a receipt, and they don't know how to get them back. And when they asked the lawyer with Boasberg, what was the money for? What was the $6 million for? Well, it was a grant, and they could use the grant over here, but it's not directly to house the prisoners, but it would support. Like, all right, enough. So we're going to see what gets filed. If the state secrets privilege gets invoked again, because it was invoked last time in front of Boasberg's court, and he was like, I don't think you have state secrets here. So there was a briefing that got delayed there, which will come back because they're going to assert the state secret privilege again. Then we jump over down the street to Maryland, where Judge Zinnus, time's up on discovery. You got two things going on in the Zinnus courtroom. You got the press, including us, getting pissed off with how many sealed and redacted filings are getting made in the case that we can't figure out what's going on. One of the reasons we have difficulty in reporting, it's not because we're not there, it's because we can't read anything. We're getting these blackouts. Like you and I were speculating 2 weeks ago as to why she put a hold on discovery for a week, because she read something in two sealed filings we couldn't read that said, all right, my gut is the Trump administration said they were working on diplomatic channels to get back Abrego Garcia, and they didn't need the court kind of and public looking at it. And they were, all right, I'll give you a week. That failed. And another sealed filing. And so 16 or 14 news agencies has filed a motion to intervene to get the docket unsealed. And she set a briefing schedule on that for May. And then buried in that same order was a reference to a sealed document that we didn't know what it said, but she revealed it was the Trump administration trying to invoke the state secrets privilege to go tell her to, how do I put this nicely, to go tell her to go F herself and pound sand, that they were never going to tell her what they're really doing, if anything, to bring back Abrego Garcia despite the Supreme Court decision. And it all comes back to Stephen Miller and the lawlessness on display that we started off this podcast with. This is Stephen Miller worming his way as an earworm into Donald Trump and telling him that he's in the right from a legal analysis standpoint. And when Donald Trump, I'll end it on this, Ben, when Donald Trump looks the American people in the eye and says, the best that I can do is Jeanine Pirro to be the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, or Alina Habba to be the U.S. attorney for New Jersey, or I have the best and brightest minds working on my legal matters. That is a complete and utter lie. Just Google translate that into, I have weak people who are not good at their job, who I don't respect nor will I listen to, and I'm going to remain willfully blind about most of it when I go on network news. And I'm going to get all of my policymaking done through being glued to cable news, where I'm also going to pull people into my administration like Jeanine Pirro. If I hear one more Fox and Friends, The Five, whatever, going into a top leadership position that's the best and the brightest, Fox. So Boasberg, we're going to see new filings coming up. Zinnus, she's set a briefing schedule about these things as well. And by the end of May, after a hearing, she's going to make a ruling about the state secrets and about how much you and I are going to be able to see in the future of things. The reason, let me just end it on redaction. The reason redaction is important is because in our public justice system, the people have a place at the table. It's the prosecutor, it's the defense and the defendant, it's the judge, but it's the public, because we don't do star chambers, despite what Donald Trump and Stephen Miller would have you believe. We don't do things in the dark. And you have to bend over backwards, and that's what judges will tell you, to make sure that everything ends up on the docket so the public can see. You get charged in the public, you get tried in the public, and things along the way are public. Now, sometimes they're temporarily sealed. Eventually, all those sealings come off, and then you and I end up reporting about things 6 months later. Welcome back. We do that show Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, live on YouTube on the Midas Touch Network. And then you can also get us on audio podcast platforms. Just plug in Legal AF. That combination of watches and views and listens has helped get us the top 13 in the world as a podcast. That's on you. That's a compliment to you, and it's humbling for us. It makes us strive harder and work harder at the intersection of law and politics. It also had us establish a new Legal AF YouTube channel, Legal AF MTN, that I curate, and I got about a dozen contributors there as well at the same intersection of law and politics. And a Legal AF Substack. You can't get enough of Legal AF, I would think, but what you can also do is help us grow our audience. We don't have outside investors. We don't have a marketing agency. We are the marketing agency. we are the change you've been looking for, and the YouTube channel you've been looking for, and podcast you've been looking for. Send this clip to people in your life and ask them to join this journey as part of their own. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.